Hello everyone. This is an IFM and the topic which we are doing today is yield curves. What are yield curves, how bond yields move, and what sort of economic forecasting can be done by using the bond yields. Now the data which we have taken is ZCYC, zero coupon yield curve. This is all pretty old data. We are using it for academic purposes, but the logic remains the same irrespective of what time. So first let us try to understand when we say the term yield curve. Now as the government of India is running a fiscal deficit, each year the government borrows close to 5 lakh crore rupees, give or take here or there. Now when the government of India borrows, whenever anyone borrows for that matter, there is an interest which needs to be paid, and the rate of interest in bond market, that is known as coupon. So if I am borrowing 100 rupees from you at the rate of 8%, then that 8% will be known as a coupon. Now let us also try to understand that amongst the various borrowers who are there in front of us, the government of India is the safest. So when the government of India is borrowing at, let us say, 8%, then any large private corporate entity, if that entity wants to borrow, then that entity will have to pay an interest which will be slightly higher than 8%, and a smaller corporate entity will have to pay even higher. So let's say government of India 8%, some big private corporate 9%, a smaller corporate 10%. Why will they have to pay higher interest to the investor? Because if you are the investor and if you have got 100 rupees with you, and if the government of India is saying that I am ready to borrow from you at 8%, and some other private entity also is saying I am ready to borrow at 8%, obviously from your point of view, from the investor's point of view, the risk level associated with the government is less. Therefore, for less risk, I mean, if there are two asset classes, both are giving the same interest income, then obviously the investor would like to have that which has a lower risk. So therefore, if both the interest rates or both the coupon rates are same, then obviously the private borrower will not get any money, because every investor would then like to go for a same interest income but lower risk. So what will the private borrower do in that case to attract more money is he will have to increase his interest rates. So therefore, if the government coupon is 8%, he will have to give 9%, only then will an investor have at least an incentive to take higher risk. So if the large private corporate will be borrowing at 9%, the smaller corporate will obviously have to have a higher interest rate. So that is how the interest rate structure will get built. Safer the entity, lower will be the interest cost for that entity. Riskier the entity, higher will be the interest cost for that entity. And in any setup, the sovereign or the government will always be the safest. Therefore, the rate at which government borrows is hugely important from various factors. Like as we discussed, the first factor, if the government is borrowing at 8%, then that will become as the base for other borrowers. That is one. Second is, the government borrowing will be to a large extent useful in deciding the inflation number, because ultimately inflation number, if the cost of borrowing is high, automatically that will mean in the economy as a whole, automatically that will mean that inflation will always remain elevated to a certain level. So therefore, the government borrowing is important from various angles. Now also let us try to understand, when we say the word borrowing, we have seen two broad things. These are in bond market terms, these are known as credit rating, which is the quality of the borrower. So the government is the safest, then the private large borrowers, then the smaller borrowers. Even for individuals like you and me, there is something known as CIBIL. So that is a credit rating for individuals. So that is one part. Whenever we are doing borrowing, the credit rating will obviously be there. Then the second part we spoke about was the coupon or the interest rate. And the third part which we must talk about in terms of borrowing, or when we are talking about borrowing or debt or fixed income, a better word would be fixed income, then that is the tenor or the term. So let us first try to understand this simple part. When we are depositing money in fixed deposits, that is an asset for us, but that is a liability for the bank. And for how long we put money, that is the period of the fixed deposit. Look at another example of a housing loan. That is a loan for us, so it is a liability for us, but it is an asset for the bank, and it is a 20-year period. So any discussion on loans or borrowings or fixed income securities cannot be complete till we talk about all these three things, which is credit rating, coupon, and the term or the tenor. So the same thing, if we have to do it for Government of India, it will be the same thing. The Government of India will borrow something, so there will be the rate at which they borrow, that will be the coupon rate, or depending upon various time frames, there will be some short term paper which will be issued by the Government of India, there will be some long term paper issued by. Now we have seen that the Government of India has issued paper up to as long as 30 years. So there are extremely short term papers which is less than 1 year, and there is paper dated securities or GSEC or gilts as they are known as, right up to 30 years. So we have papers available from less than 1 year to 30 years, each having a separate coupon, and depending upon market participants' expectations, what are their return expectations for each of the term, the yields keep changing in the market. And when we plot a chart, which on the x axis has got term, so here we have 0.5 years, 5 years, here we have written term to maturity. So 0.5 years, 5 years, 10, 15, 20 years. So on the x axis we have got the time, and on the y axis we have got the yield in percentage. Now the yield is what is the return expectation of the investor or of the market participant. 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12%, up to 12% we have got. Now we have to understand, many people feel that bond markets are safe, that I don't lose money in bond market, and that's a wrong assumption. Bond markets are safe only relative to equity markets. In absolute terms, one can lose money even in bond markets, because, now this is an important point we need to understand, because the coupon is fixed whereas the yields keep changing, which means the coupon, or that means the interest which the borrower has agreed to pay to the lender for the term of the borrowing, that does not change for the entire term, but the interest rates in the economy, they keep changing. Let's not get into these complex terms. Let us first understand in a very simple manner. Let's say you invest 100 rupees for 1 year at 8%, or let us do a small Excel of that, so it will be relatively easy. So let's say first we are putting 100 rupees, we are putting this for a period of 1 year and at the rate of 8%. Similarly, we are putting another 100 rupees but for a period of 10 years at the rate of 8%. So what is same? We are putting the same amount of money at the same coupon rate, which is 8%, but for different time periods. One is 1 year, one is 10 years. Now what happens is RBI keeps changing rates. So let's say, for example, interest rates go from 8% to 7%. What will happen in this case? In the first bond or in the first fixed income instrument, not necessarily bond, any fixed income, even a fixed deposit, let's say for example, in this case I will get my 108 rupees after 1 year, which now if I want to reinvest for another 1 year, I will have to be contented with 7% because interest rates have come down. Reinvestment, we are talking of the word reinvestment. So let's understand, 100 rupees for 1 year, first year I got my 8 rupees. What happened after I got my 8 rupees? I had to reinvest the 108 at the rate of 7% because interest rates have come down. What will happen in the second case? In the second case, I won't be getting any money back because this is a 10-year fixed deposit. But what is important is, even though interest rates have come down, my money will continue to grow at the rate of 8%, which is the earlier coupon. So we need to understand this, that if I have already invested at whatever interest rate, these are examples, at whatever coupon rate, and if interest rates come down as in this example, then I am a beneficiary in the long term bond or in the long term fixed deposit, and I am a loser in the short term fixed deposit. Let us look at it like this. Let us take the same example, but we will do a slightly different thing. Instead of interest rates coming down to 7%, interest rates go up to 9%. Now if interest rates were to rise, here my money will increase at 9%, whereas my second fixed deposit will continue to grow at 8%. So let us understand, it's not always that long term bonds or long term fixed deposits are good. It's not always that short term fixed deposits are bad. No, it's a function of interest rate movement. If you have invested at, let's say, this rate, and if interest rates fall, then you are beneficiary. If you have invested at this rate and let's say interest rates rise, then you are a loser. So therefore, investment in bond markets has got its own risk, and what we just now spoke about, this is the most inherent risk in bond markets, which is known as interest rate risk. Be it any bond, be it government security, be it any private corporate bond. So knowledge of interest rates is extremely crucial for a bond market investor, for a policy maker, to understand what is the cost of borrowing going to be, and therefore other things follow. So coming back to our main topic. So we have bonds issued by the government of India up to 20 years. Now there are 5 lines which we can see here. Each line is known as yield curve, or it is also known as term structure of interest rates. Why this word term structure? Here we are talking about interest rates, so therefore interest rates, term, and how the structure of the interest rates is for various terms. So therefore this graph shows the yield curve, this graph shows the term structure of interest rates, and this graph shows different yield curves at different points of time. Now we are going slightly deeper into the topic. So we have got different yield curves, there are different dates given. What we will be doing is, we will be looking at each of this date, and we will be looking at that point of time, what was the interest rate structure like, and what was the yield curve telling us. Does the yield curve tell us something about the economy? Does it have something for us to study so that we can take appropriate decisions? Does the low yield curve tell something? Does the high yield curve tell something? So we need to look at all these topics, and therefore this entire discussion will be now focusing upon what are the various types of yield curves, what is the shape of each yield curve, and what we can interpret of yield from each of these yield curves. So that we will be looking at in the next video. Thank you very much.